Yes, you read that right. Today I am playing Etali in Standard. Once again, I am at a Standard Regional Championship Qualifier here at Paya Lebar Games Haven. This is the first step to going to the World Championships. So the deck that I play today is a super fun one. It's Rakdos, Black-Red Ramp into Etali. This deck mainboards 3 copies of Etalis, 2 copies of Breach the Multiverse. There's a bunch of dinosaurs, there's a bunch of board wipes, a lot of early interaction as well. I don't have super high hopes for it, but you know, maybe you get a win or two. So in round 1, my opponent is playing a really interesting black and green fight rigging deck. So this deck is built around this enchantment, comes in, hide away 5, and then on combat he puts a +1 counter on his creature. If he has a creature with power 7 or greater, he can play the exiled card for free. And he very quickly got up to 2 fight riggings, but fortunately for me he couldn't find a 6 powered or 7 powered creature, and I managed to cast Breach into the Multiverse on turn 5. Of course I was trying to mill into an Etali, but no such luck, and the 2 creatures that I did get were quickly removed by my opponent before he followed up with a 3rd fight rigging. So at this point he put me down to 6. But through sheer desperation, I managed to stabilize, get rid of his threats. Even though he cast more creatures and had a Shieldred on board, I went all the way down to 1. So hanging on by a literal thread, I managed to stay alive by casting some of my board wipes. And from there, I finally found an Etali, flipped into a Breach the Multiverse, which got me a Shieldred from my opponent's graveyard and another Etali from my own graveyard. So yes, this is the deck, this is what I came here for, and this is being done in a qualifying event. So I pretty much took over the game from there. He played a few more creatures which I dealt with, and once he saw that I was going to reanimate another dinosaur, he scooped it up and we went to game 2. So it's at this point of the video where I want to say that I'm doing this because I genuinely enjoy Standard. It helps me scratch that competitive itch. I think it's a great format for people trying to get into Magic and for experienced players who enjoy brewing decks, you know, testing new deck ideas, and of course playing with new cards. And as you just saw from this game, sometimes you can brew decks that really feel like you're playing Commander. You just cast big flashy spells, you come back from 1 life. There's so many amazing, interesting things you can do in Standard. And like I said in the previous video, playing Standard daily events at the LGS is how I met people like Paul and Liang Ying. And I just enjoy it, interacting with new people, seeing what decks people bring. So yeah, I really do encourage more people to try it out, support the LGS, and I really hope Wizards also provides more support for paper Magic in general and hopefully Standard. But let's get back to the video. Let's see how many more Etalis can I cast and can I win more games. So the second game was maybe even more epic than the first game. My opponent very quickly found his 6 powered creature. This is Archfiend of the Dross, it's a 6/6 flyer. And he also found his fight rigging very quickly after that. So I was at 10 life basically before I even cast a single spell. I did manage to clear his board though. But the turn before I was gonna cast Etali, he played a Deep Cavern Bat to snatch it right out of my hand. So I had pretty much nothing to do, and he just kept applying pressure, making sure to keep playing threats and forcing me to use my resources dealing with his stuff. He eventually got a Shieldred down on his side of the battlefield, and I had to use Chandra to remove both Shieldred and the bat, but at least this got Etali back into my hand. So my opponent just kept playing more and more stuff that would kill me because I was at 5 life at this point. So I just had to cast Etali and hope for the best, see whether I could survive. So we flipped our cards until we hit non-land cards, and I got a creature from my opponent's deck and a Virtue of Persistence from my deck, which would basically reanimate a creature on my upkeep every turn. So having all these on board was pretty much going to win me the game unless he could kill me on the next turn. And on my end step, with the last card in his hand, my opponent played a removal spell, getting rid of Etali. So all he needed to draw was another spell to get rid of my other blocker. And he drew his card, he looked at it for a while, and then he played an Infernal Grasp, which says destroy target creature. So that destroyed my last creature, and yeah, I lose. So we moved on to game number 3 to decide the winner, and at this point there was very little time left on the clock. So I'm gonna make this summary very quick as well. He found early game hand disruption and big creatures. I managed to ramp very quickly into Etali. And then the most amazing sequence of events happened. Etali flipped into a Brotherhood's End, which got rid of some of his creatures, but I also found a fight rigging off the top of his deck. So I played that, did the hideaway thing, found another Etali in the top 5 cards of my library, so obviously I took that Etali. And then on combat, fight rigging triggers puts a +1 counter on my current Etali, and then lets me cast the Exiled card for free, which is another Etali, so I cast it. This time I just get another Brotherhood's End and a Deep Cavern Bat, so nothing much, but still that was really cool. And from there I only had 3 turns to kill him before time ran out, so I just started smacking him. And on my opponent's final turn, he played out a Shieldred and the Dread Knight, so he had 2 blockers. I did have 1 removal spell in hand, which is the Dinosaur, so I used it, taking out the Dread Knight. Then I untapped, and I did not draw into an answer for Shieldred. So I just did what I could. I played a Cruelty of Gigs, reanimating the Etali that was in my graveyard, hoping to find a removal spell in one of our libraries, which didn't happen, but I did flip into another Cruelty of Gigs. So obviously I cast it again, getting back Etali once again, and this time on the final turn I flip into a removal spell which got rid of Shieldred, which wins me the game. Alright, so that was a super exciting start to the tournament, but before you get too excited about the deck and start buying up all the Etalis, I'm gonna break the bad news to you. That was the only game that I won in the 5 Swiss rounds. That's right, it all went downhill from there. In the next round, I matched up against Banned Toxic, and this is the same opponent I faced last week, and pretty much the same thing happened. You know, I'm playing a slow deck, and he just overwhelmed me with Toxic Mites. I think I died on turn 4, and then in the second game I died on turn 5. Even though I had multiple board wipes and removal, you know, he just had the right answers, the right creatures, counterspell obviously. So that game ended in like 15 minutes flat. And then in round 3, I actually faced a very interesting Orzhov deck. This was kind of a Planeswalker control deck. It had a ton of Planeswalkers like Sorin, there was Vraska, and there was Kaya as well. And the deck had just a lot of removal as well, including an Urza Silex that actually blows up lands. So in that first game I just took a bit too much damage and eventually lost to a Kaya activation, which just drained me for 3 life. But in game 2 it was a lot more balanced. I do think that the Etali deck would actually do well against a control deck like this. I also brought in Ashiok from the sideboard, which is another Planeswalker threat. And unfortunately my opponent was also missing a lot of her land drops. She was stuck on 4 lands for a long time, so I managed to accrue a lot of value. And I ended up winning that game through an Ashiok -7 activation, which milled out her entire library. So that match actually ended in a 1-1 draw because the games were just so long and we ran out of time. So at this point my record was 1 win, 1 loss and 1 draw. So going into round 4, I knew I couldn't afford to lose another game. Unfortunately, I paired into a really good player who was playing Domain, which is, you know, kind of the best deck in the format right now. Although I do think that the Etali deck actually has the tools to go even bigger than Domain and be favored in the matchup. But like I said, my opponent was really well prepared and probably, you know, had a lot more practice than me and maybe is a better player than me. So I got hit by a bunch of Tishana's Tidebinders, which basically negates the Etali trigger. But I did manage to resolve a Breach the Multiverse, which found me an Etali from my deck and an Atraxa off of my opponent's deck. And then from the Etali trigger, I got another one of his Atraxas, so that was awesome. Even though I did eventually go on to lose that game just from combat damage. And the second game was a lot more grindier, and the both of us were just waiting for an opening to get the upper hand. But eventually, my opponent just managed to grind out more value, and my last ditch attempt to cast a Breach the Multiverse got countered, of course, by a negate. In my final round, with, you know, nothing to play for, I matched up against Simic Cookies. Yes, that is an actual deck name. It's super interesting. It plays with things like Gingerbread, Tough Cookie, Search Engine, Teething Wormlet. It's a pretty aggressive deck. It's a deck that is kind of hard to pilot. One of the key cards in that deck is also Agatha's Soul Cauldron. And this is a matchup that was actually great for me because my deck mainboards 4 copies of Brotherhood's End, which kind of just wipes their entire board because they're all artifacts. So in game 1, I drew 3 or 4 Brotherhood's End and it was just a clean sweep, a really easy game for me. So moving on to game 2 and post sideboard, my opponent of course brought in all of their counter spells and protection spells and I found it a lot harder. I also didn't draw any Brotherhood's End, so eventually I just got beaten down and I lost that game. And in the third game, somehow my opponent just had all his sideboard pieces, which means that I basically couldn't resolve a single removal spell, and yeah, I just lost that game. But overall the experience was great. I really enjoyed seeing all these different decks and piloting this Etali deck. I do think that, you know, with a bit more practice, I could have maybe won some of those matches. And for the rest of this qualifying season, I am going to try and win, probably with a different deck. And speaking of winning, here are the 2 finalists from this qualifying event. I've been watching the finalists play, the 2 of them. This is Samuel. Samuel won actually, and Samuel here has been playing Toxic this entire RCQ season.
Yeah, correct. So I think I chose this deck like back then in early December for the Animart. So I was like looking at the Japan player tournament list and I found this deck looks interesting, so I tried it.
Nice.
It's interesting to play, but it's a bit gacha because it's 3-color deck in standard. So sometimes the hand just kill you like move to 5, move to 4, but like sometimes it's draw not hands and no one can do anything.
Okay, and what was the best play that happened today?
Not best play. Luckiest play is when I move to 4 against domain on the play and still win. It's my best matchup.
How did you win on a mount to 4 against domain?
I also want to know that. I play creature and just attack, but hand is interaction, that's it.
I see. Okay, yeah, well, Samuel, very cool. Congratulations on your win. Second place, playing a very spicy deck. It's Wei Chen. What are you playing and why?
I'm playing 5-color legendary humans today. This deck allows you to play all 8 of the channel lands, Iganjo, Boseiju, and you get 4 Plaza, 4 Cavern, 4 Secluded Courtyard.
4 Joda as well.
4 Joda and some other really spicy humans.
Like Jeru, I think Jeru and Hazaret.
Yep.
Haja is spicy, and of course Talia because it's an all creature deck.
Yes. Today was a very rough day. I matched up against 4 domain players, which is the worst matchup for this deck. But I won every single one of them because Talia! Talia!
Okay, but what about the final match? You did Toxic, what happened?
He was on the play, I was on the draw. he had 3 Rod Priests. How do you beat 3 Rod Priests double war?
So yeah, that's it for the RCQ. I hope you enjoyed this video, and you know there's a previous one as well I played last weekend. Thanks again for watching. See you all next time.
Bye.
Bye.